Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships and navigating and healing from these relationships. And I want to take on a topic that is, it's interesting languaging for what happens in a narcissistic relationship. It is what happens in a narcissistic relationship, which is emotional blackmailing. So blackmail, right? Which is a colloquial word for extortion, right? Which is this shakedown. That you have the goods on someone, or you even have information on someone that you threaten you will make public if they don't give you money of some kind, right? So the most standard would be maybe you have a picture or an email or incriminating, damning email, and they're like, I'll keep this a secret if you give me $10,000, right? That's typically what we consider blackmail or extortion to be. Right? And in many of these kinds of extortionate situations, what happens is that over time, it's never just once. And then once they know they have a live target, the blackmailer, the extorter, has that person in position that they'll keep sort of going back to the well, right? Keep that model in mind because, emotional blackmail is one of those things that we get asked about. And then I was looking at the literature about it. Everything that was being described as being emotional blackmail. And I took some notes here, right? So things that qualify as emotional blackmail are the silent treatment and withholding, being a victim. They'll be a victim. And if you don't do something that they need or give them something they need, that something terrible will befall them. So they'll be yammering on about their money problems and will come to you saying, oh, I just got the eviction notice, or soon I'm not going to have a car, or I'm not going to be able to go see my family for Christmas. And so it's manipulation, right? By them playing the victim, the idea being that you would step up. If they don't, they also will try to get their way by being moping or sullen, and that if you do give them their way, then they will pop up back to life and you'll have a cheerful person in front of you. And won't that be great? Future faking, which even though the emotional blackmail literature doesn't call it that, it's a lot of future faking. They'll also do things, they'll make a promise based on a future thing to get something from you in the present moment. Another thing that comes up as part of emotional blackmail is that they'll bring up a thing that they did for you in the past, and then ask for a favor in light of the fact that they did something for you 25 years ago, or they will lay out something that they did for you in the past and now expect you to fix something in their lives. So when I read you these things, all of these things that constitute what's called emotional blackmail are all forms of manipulation. And I guess the big question, there's two big questions here, is that are the only people who emotionally blackmail, are they narcissistic? I don't think that only narcissistic people emotionally blackmail. There's probably other people who do. I think narcissism, though, is probably going to be, I know all narcissistic people do this emotional blackmail thing. But I'll tell you why I'm not always maybe not that I'm not a huge fan of the term, but here's where it gets tricky. Blackmail is based on somebody having something on you, right? It could be a sexually incriminating image, or a email where you wrote something you weren't supposed to, whatever it may be, right? And so they will try to extort money on the basis of them holding a vulnerability of yours. Where this gets interesting is it doesn't work exactly the same way in a narcissistic relationship, with the difference being that the emotional blackmailer must figure out that if they do this thing, that the so-called collateral they have on you, the sort of dirty picture or the dirty email, when we're talking about emotional blackmail, might be things like literally your empathy, or your tendency to fix things for people, or your own trauma response, which means tension and yelling doesn't feel good to you. They're basically playing. So in this case, instead of it being, like I said, a incriminating picture or email, in the emotional blackmail world, what they have on you is what they know will motivate you to do something. So if in the past they have found that playing victim gets you to give them some money, or if bringing up the past will get them to mobilize you to do a favor for them, or that you are willing to do something on the basis of a future faked promise, or that you don't want something bad to happen to them, so you're always willing to bail them out. That in a way is the sort of thing that they hold over you, right? But there's also, that's how they get you pulled in. But the thing they hold over you, right? So it's two separate things. One is the thing they use to draw you in. That would be, if you will, the incriminating picture or email. And in a narcissistic relationship, the thing that they hold over you is not only in a strange way your vulnerability, but then this idea that something terrible will happen to them. I won't have a place to live. I won't have a job. I won't have a car. I will be in danger, or the sense that you owe me. So it doesn't ascribe perfectly to that model of extortion. That's why I don't love it being called emotional blackmail. I really think of it as straight up sheer manipulation, right? But the using of the term emotional blackmail really plays on this idea that they know that you won't let them twist in the wind. So they'll hope you're going to offer it to them in a nice, easy way, but that they will let it get all the way to the point where the terrible thing's going to happen. Because now you're in a catch-22. You may not want to be the person who is responsible for example, them having their car repossessed. Because if they get their car repossessed, then you'll feel guilty, or worse yet, you might have to drive them to work, and all the inconvenience is going to happen. Or you don't want them to be evicted because A, you'd feel guilty, and then B, you might need to feel like you have to take them in. It can really go against our grain to take that hard line of stance, like, I don't care if your car gets repossessed. You're the one who financially, I've given you tons of money and you haven't used it this way. And so they're then playing again on your empathy and also your fear of self-blame. That sense of, I don't want to be the one who is living with this on my chest. So now we're trading between two things. And this is where toxic relationships get so messed up. Because on one hand, we don't want to live with the self-blame and regret that something we might have been able to fix for someone would have fixed the problem. But then on the other, we're then living with this ongoing sense of resentment, and then knowing that they're going to keep coming back again and again. So either way, we sort of end up sort of angry at ourselves. But this kind of catch-22-ness, again, is a hallmark of all toxic relationships. But because for people who are decent people, if you do care about this person, even if you've completely had it with them, you don't want them to be in this situation. Now, emotional blackmail, for example, is not unusual in people living with addiction. That singular motivation to get resource or money to either get drugs or get out of a financially precarious position that was created by spending money on drugs and not on rent and car payments and all of that, can lead a person to a place where they're going to do anything they can to ensure, A, they can keep using, and B, not lose the things that are around them, right? So we might see that kind of a manipulative maneuver happen someplace there. But even then, in most of these cases, when a person's engaging in this so-called emotional blackmail, antagonism and narcissism are at the core of it. Where it gets really wonky is the emotional blackmail literature is a very different space online, if you were, than the narcissism space. And a lot of the guidance given to people who are going through emotional blackmail are things like state your case, set boundaries, talk to them about it. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is going to work for no one ever. So I think that one of the challenges is that I'd have to say, if you're going to push back on emotional blackmail, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is that just like in any sort of extortion scenario, even a traditional blackmail extortion scenario, it's the moment you say, then go public with the picture. I'm not giving you any money. And you call their bluff. Now, maybe they will, and then you'll have to deal with that, whatever fallout of whatever picture they claim to have. Or they go away. And in this case, the becoming comfortable with the discomfort is that if you don't say, no, I'm not going to do this, they're probably going to figure out, even if they figure out another person to emotionally blackmail. But what might happen is they may step out of your life. There'll be that sort of abandonment after gaslighting, for example, we see with people. So you may actually lose this person. They may paint a picture of you as being cruel and cold and unyielding and unforgiving, which may not be how you view yourself. So that may be uncomfortable. You may actually literally worry about what's going to happen to them. So that may be uncomfortable. But as again, in most blackmail scenarios, most extortion scenarios, as it were, the only way is to not play in the first place. But that really requires nerves of steel. And that's not always a strength for those of us who've been through narcissistic relationships. But while I do see that emotional blackmail, it has a gaslighty feel. It has a future faking feel. It definitely can present in any form of narcissism. Vulnerable narcissistic people in particular are really good at using the victimhood and the sad sack stories to draw people in. Malignant narcissistic people may use much more heavy-handed plays to get what they want from people. But it is very much something that we see as being a part of the narcissistic relationship picture that has tones of, like I said, gaslighting and future faking and manipulation and all of that. But it can show up in other kinds of relationships as well. Whenever we do something that we don't want to do, but we're doing it in order to sort of keep the peace or keep a relationship going, it's a pretty good sign that you are being emotionally blackmailed. There is no easy answer here. But one thing you really want to do is something we do in this whole world of narcissism all along. Pay attention to when someone does this to you. Because even if you do give into it that one time, give them the card payment, give them the money for the rent, they are going to do it again. So if you're going to do it, at least let it be a gateway to radical acceptance. Because now, I'll tell you, this will never be a healthy relationship in your life. And to keep your eyes open and be wildly aware of this being the dynamic, so you know whether to disengage, stop investing money in this, or at least see it clearly so you can protect yourself in other ways. So them's the mean streets of emotional blackmailing. Again, I'm not sure how much of a fan I am of the term, but it's definitely, the dynamics are definitely a classical part of every narcissistic relationship. Thanks again.